The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Mid-Carolina Service Company.
Mid-Carolina Service Company is the first name to search for your residential or commercial HVAC needs in Lexington and surrounding areas.
Just go holler at Jason and Clint. They'll hook you up on the air conditioners, on the restaurant equipment, refrigerators, refrigeration, ice machine repair. They've been doing this for years. I know them cats forever.
Family owned and operated since 2006, they pride themselves in their quality work and customer relationships. Call 803-356-4153 or visit midcarolinaserviceco.com for a no obligation quote for service today.
The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by True Brilliance Entertainment.
True Brilliance is a production, promotions, and management company dedicated to connecting artists and producers across the Carolinas to music industry professionals.
Several of their clients have placements both domestic and internationally as a result of their services.
Are you an artist or producer looking to build meaningful relationships within the music industry? Then True Brilliance is for you. Check them out at paramilitary.com. That's spelled P-A-I-R-A military.com.
This episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Bob's. Bob's is a Columbia-based retailer of over 100 Black-owned products from 20 Black-owned businesses. Bob's offers a wide range of items from household cleaning, cosmetics, and everything in between. With every visit to Bob's, you support Black-owned businesses, giving them the opportunity to grow and establish connections with our community. Bob's is located inside the Noma warehouse at 2222 Sumter Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Visit their website, weshopbobs.com for in-store pickup or to find out more. Bob's can also be found via social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at weshopbobs. When you stop by, tell them the Hilltop Glove sent you. Bob's brings quality Black brands to the Columbia community. The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Red Rooster Sports Bar and Grill. Red Rooster is your neighborhood bar and grill serving the best wings, burgers, and baskets in the Met.
Like the amazing food, the bar is always on tap, and there's plenty of screens to watch the big game. Red Rooster is the Midland's premier meetup spot for local car and bike clubs, fraternities, and sororities.
Staff is dedicated to accommodating all kinds of parties and events. If you're looking to catch a game, have a bite, and a drink, look no further than the Red Rooster.
Red Rooster is located at 7500 Wilson Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, visit redroostersportsbar.com or visit them on Facebook and Instagram at Red Rooster Sports Bar. Go where the winners go.
Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast.
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 Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast, where Skip and DJ and What interview guests and discuss topics such as business, current events, and pop culture. The motivational podcast for the hip-hop millennial. Okay. I know.
Father's Day.
Father's Day. 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to this special episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. I'm DJ and What with my brother Skip.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing today? And we have a special episode for this Father's Day. And this is one of our favorite people to talk to. And I always tell people, please have good relationships with your parents. It helps you out in the long run, especially whenever you need good advice or et cetera, especially if your parents are there. It's always best, as they say, to give them their flowers while they're here now instead of waiting for later. But today we're speaking with my father, Kevin.
It's my dad too, man.
Yeah. My father and my brother's father. Yeah, it's both of our fathers.
Come on now.
Yeah, Kevin Bernard Saggers. Senior. Yeah, we got to put the senior on it because we do have Junior right here, number 2 right here.
Yes.
Right beside us. And he does have his daughter with him, Savannah.
Yes.
So this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk a little bit about fatherhood, being a father, what it's like, how you deal with it, the things that come along with it, etc. And one thing about our podcast, we like being honest and truthful. And we also like to help us out because as millennials, adulting is challenging and hard. And so wherever we can get advice from or assistance in making sure that this journey is smooth, we try to do so. So how you doing today, Pops?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine for Father's Day.
Excellent.
And what have you, with my little princess here grinning and giggling and what have you.
She's flying
doing
around the
fine.
room.
Yes, she is.
Well, first things first, just so our audience can know, if you could just tell them a little bit about yourself, where you're from, etc., some things you may like, just so they know before we get into this conversation that you are people too. Because I always like to tease. Sometimes it's like on Peanuts. That's how people look at their parents. They just go wah 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 wah. But you know, they are people too. So tell them a little bit about yourself, Pop.
Okay, I'll tell you about Kevin Staggers Sr. Born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, 1960. So I was part of the baby boom generation, and you know, we went through some times and we seen some changes.
I believe it.
In the 60s, I'm talking about, because I'm one of those people, I have this memory. I can go back and I remember things since I remember when I was like 3-4 years old at times. I have those memories. And the thing about it, I remember just growing up with a lot of family, you know, you know, because it was a big family. I am the youngest of 10.
Please repeat that. I think I remember growing up hearing that. I thought that was wild.
Yeah, the youngest of 10. Well, actually, I'm the second youngest of 10 because I had a brother younger than me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, being the youngest of 10 after, you know, my youngest brother passed, I guess I'm the baby of the family, as they always called me. It just, you always looked out after or taken care of, or somebody was always looking out for you, or so, you know, I was cared for, and what have you. And being the youngest, I always wanted to find out for myself, because back in that day, back then, I used to explore. Your freedoms, you know, as a child, you could explore without worrying about, you know, people trying to snatch you up and what have you. Yeah, because, you know,
sounds wild.
I'm talking about, you know, 5 years old, walking a couple of blocks, you know, to go to the store, just me and my buddy or what have you, or me and my sister and what have you. So, you know, you had those freedoms and stuff growing up in the 60s. And growing up in New England town. Yeah. And what have you. So diverse, because we were like one of the first, or probably, I think we were the first black family on our street when I was like about 5 years old.
Wow. So
4 or 5 years old. Yeah, about 64, 65. And I never experienced any difficulties with that, even though it was around, but I never experienced any difficulties with it. But
especially, you know, how it's being, the perception of it nowadays, because like they say, out of sight, out of mind. Everything's in sight, in mind right now. So especially when you say stuff like that, for back then, people were like, what? You didn't experience any issues or anything like that?
Oh, no, I did. Not at that age. And until I experienced it when I experienced the racism when I came south one time. We came on a trip one time because your grandfather, my father, was he was always a hustler, and he was a businessman. On the side, he worked and then he hustled on the side. So he had a friend, Mr. Howard. He used to travel south. He used to come south and what have you to pick up supplies. We always had one of these big station wagons.
Yeah.
So he used to come south and what have you, travel south a couple of times a month, just for a weekend, a couple of days, and to pick up supplies for his friends' corner store, for things for family that you didn't normally get, that you were accustomed to from the south, and you didn't have it up there. Stores didn't sell it up there, so he'd come down here, pick up a load, load up the car with it, and the top of the car and inside the car, and we'd go on back, and he'd sell it. Mr. Howard would sell it in his stores. He'd make a couple dollars off of it. He used to buy cases of cigarettes and he'd sell them off and what have you. That's what he did.
Yes, they did, yeah.
That was extra money because you could get it so much cheaper down here. Back then, they were buying a carton of cigarettes for like about $2 down in the South, and he'd sell it for, $8, $10 up there.
Whoa.
So,
all right.
That's the stuff, he used to do. So we came down one time, and I remember you're 5, 6 years old, and you stop at there's a pizza restaurant. I see this pizza restaurant, I said, oh, we're going to the pizza. Go to get some pizza. We're going to this pizza restaurant. And my father went into the pizza restaurant. I didn't realize why we had to sit in the car first. We were in North Carolina. It was 701 or 301, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And he went in because this was before 95 was wasn't completed.
So you were on the regular.
Oh, yeah, there was 95. They were still building 95. And I remember this as a kid. And he went in and he came back out and he said, no, we won't be getting any pizza and what have you.
Yeah.
So, we're not getting any pizza. Can't use the bathroom. Couldn't get any pizza. Going up the road, and I'm hearing my parents talk and what have you. And they're talking about, they didn't serve black people and stuff in there and what have you. So that was my first boom.
This is there's something different going on.
Oh, sure. So, and that was one of my first experiences and one of the first times I heard of Martin Luther King.
Oh, wow.
Because I remember them talking in this conversation, talking about, Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And
oh, wow.
I said, okay, whatever that. And I asked my mother, what was the I was calling it silver rights.
Silver rights.
Because I was a kid. I didn't know.
I understand.
And I said, what was this civil rights person and stuff like that? And she was trying to explain to me as best she knew what it was about. But I never, I didn't know at that time that's what it was related to. Until I got older, I realized that's what had happened.
You were living.
Yeah, and what have you. Because hell, across the street, my best friend, three of my best friends growing up were white kids,
You didn't know that had already.
The woman, when my mother was going, she went back to night school, was going to nursing school to get her nursing certificate and stuff like that back in the day. This was the woman who used to feed us and pick us up after school and feed us, give us our lunch when my mother was working during the day and what have you. Little Evelyn Gargano and what have you. So me and her son, because she had 4 or 5 kids at the time. And she ended up having 7.
Wow.
She had,
they had to be practicing Catholics.
Oh, yeah. Yes, she was. Her husband, her and her husband, so, they were our neighbors. And then you had the Sakikis next door, Salvador. He was my friend. Mm-hmm. And what have you. And up the street, little Lenny Roach, even though they used to call it Roach.
Oh, man, you got a horrible name.
No, but see, they had to change their name. When they came over from Italy, his family, actually, it's Riccelli.
Oh, that sucks.
So that's the stuff, Anthony Carano. And then the only first black person I met as a friend on that street was Jerry Blue, who moved in next door to us.
That's wild. So, like, literally, you grew up. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't, that stuff wasn't in your mind, wasn't running by you until.
Right. Yeah, because, Anthony Carano used to live down the street from me. All of us used to play baseball and stuff together, football. All of us. Jimmy Gargano and Stanley Smith and what have you. I was the only black kid and stuff. And, I found Anthony Carano's father, he was the police commissioner in New Haven at the time. I didn't know. The DeLoaches used to live next door to them, about 2 doors down. And their father, he was the chairman of the city council in New Haven and what have you. Our doctor, Dr. Massey, used to live not too far from us too, but on the other side of town. But they used to make house calls back then. Doctor.
I was about to say, he's actually know. You said that like you actually knew the doctor.
Yeah.
See?
Because he'd come to the house. It'd be 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. If everybody had the bug, he'd have to come and do his thing. So it was like, he showed up quick. It was like he wasn't that far, so I thought he was right in the neighborhood. But that's my experience growing up in New Haven as a youngster.
That's interesting.
And, that sort of shaped me for fatherhood, seeing what my father had to go through and seeing where he came from and what he's had been through. Marion, South Carolina. Yeah. But originally he's from the Manning King Street area.
Yeah, that's what I read.
And so he came from that. That's the area, that he came from, and he was one of many children. I'm not sure, 6, 7, 8, and what have you. So,
big family as well.
Yeah, big family. So, that was his thing, part of his story, because, he grew up with a stepfather because he lost his father. From my understanding, a storm came up and he was coming back from the field or working and what have you, and he got under a tree and a lightning struck the tree and the lightning killed his father, his true father, the biological father. And a gentleman by the name of Washington actually raised him. And, back then, there was no school for black kids down there. And he never said he wanted to, grow up in the South or want his kids to grow up in the South. So that's one of the reasons he left the South, because there was nothing for a black man in South Carolina.
Wow. When did he? Do you remember when they said what time he left?
My father left. My father actually left a few times. Okay, he left from down in Manning, King Street area. That was back in the 30s. He went to Washington, D.C. back in the 30s. And him and his sister, one of his sisters, Malua, then they ended up coming back. He ended up coming back this way to visit family and stuff. And that's when he actually met my mother, and he was working and what have you for some, I think he had something to do, I think he told me a railroad or something, I'm not sure. Because your grandfather used to love the trains. He used to like to travel trains. And that's when he met your grandmother.
I'm happy for that.
In Mullen, South Carolina. That's where he met her. So, that's when they moved to Connecticut in the late 30s.
Wow.
They stayed in Washington for a little while.
Okay.
Then they ended up in Connecticut.
And then
That's what that's what I gotten from him. And from that point, he never came back here to live. He said he would never come back here to live. He didn't even want to be buried in South Carolina.
For real?
Yeah.
Where did they end up burying him?
In Connecticut, New Haven.
Making sure. Okay.
Yeah, he's in the
same cemetery. Same cemetery.
So I don't know what his experience was with South Carolina, but I knew he never wanted to.
It wasn't a good one.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. So.
But that's part of that great migration too.
Like,
sure. Yeah, people got up out of there. Like they said, there was no opportunity. They were trying to do debt peonage. It wasn't happening, none of that.
No, and see, all the major industry and what have you was in the north and what have you. And you had the unions and what have you putting out and sending information into the rural areas of the South trying to get, recruit these, black folk to come up there and work in the industry, just like in, Detroit, and Pennsylvania and places like that and what have you, Ohio, that area. So, he was one of that many of that migration. Yeah. That's it.
And that was a positive, too.
Yes, it was.
You're in line, because, without him making that decision, the possibility of having a family and actually having them be prosperous, during that time, it would have been dwindling. But after your growing up in your youth, where'd you go to high school?
I went to Richard C. Lee High School.
Hey, Richard C. Lee High School. Who's it named after? Always, because that's Hillman. I'm like, who's it named after?
It was named after Mayor Richard C. Lee. This gentleman, he used to remind, as I got older, I thought about it. I said, he used to remind me of, he had this look like Jimmy Carter. He was, he was the mayor of New Haven back in the 60s. He was one of the mayors.
Okay.
And what have you, because, the high school was actually a project school. They decided, I guess some of them at University in the city of New Haven, and some people in government, I don't know, it's just city government or federal government. And it had to be federal because there was so much money put in it through the federal government.
So it came from top down.
To see. And this was something I think was going on all over the country, to create a high school in urban areas with a real diverse group of students. And it was in 1966, the school was opened. And it was a 20-year project they were doing. And then in 1986, when it was open, they cut it. They closed the school.
Seriously?
That was it. That's how it worked. That was a project. It wasn't meant to be there forever.
That sounds wild. The listeners are going to hear that and they're like, what, a project school?
That was it. And I'm quite sure they were throughout the country in certain areas. And whatever. But what it was a diverse group of students. You mingled and associated with people from all cultures. You had wealthy kids who went there. We had everyone from Asians, we had Jewish, we had Latinos, we had Russians, we had some French students, we had German students, we had Arabic.
How are they getting these students to go there?
From throughout the city, they took students from all over the city. They were picking, because there were areas where certain groups of people lived in the city of New Haven. And what really bugged me out years later was that you had the Jewish students who lived in pretty much Westville area, New Haven, the western part. But in that same vein, you had some Middle Easterns, like some Iranians and some Iraqis and, Middle Eastern Indians living in that area too. But they would, be bussed in to the Hill area. That's where it was. And they actually, took the Latino kids from, we had a lot of Puerto Ricans at the time. We had a lot of Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico and Cubans. And they were from the Fairhaven neighborhood. And, you had people, we had a lot of Italians and what have you from East Haven area, what have you, and they were busing these kids into
literally
school.
from each part
of the spectrum, right? And the black folk lived mainly black folk lived a little everywhere around there.
I was about to say, yeah, right.
So, but there was a centralized area where the Newhall area and what have you, where black folk lived. And they bought some of those students, and they had their high school over there that they particularly, stayed in the majority of. And then there's one in Fairhaven called Wilbercross High School. You had Hilltop High School, and you had Richard C. Lee. These are three major high school players and what have you.
And Wilbercross and Hill House still there, correct?
Yes, they're still there and what have you. And, at those times, they had their mixture of culture, but it wasn't as diverse as Richard C. Lee. Because, like I said, it was an experiment what they were doing.
You're right. Like, this is serious.
We had, I think Yale University had a lot to do with it, because we had quite a few of the instructors and learning teachers, whatever, who were from, they're grad students from Yale and stuff.
Yeah, that's
and
right. Yeah.
You had a teachers college there in New Haven. It was called Southern Connecticut State University at the time.
I think I've seen Uncle Ronnie having some of those shirts.
Yeah, well, because his wife, his first wife, mother of his children, that's where she graduated from. He had actually went there. Him and Levon took courses there. Uncle Levon, yeah. And so it was called, back then it was called New Haven's Teachers College before it became Southern.
Gotcha.
And so they would come, they went to school to be teachers. You went there, you were going to be a teacher.
School, yeah.
And that's it. And that's what they did. So, that's the type of school
That's not a normal one.
No, it was interesting, because they were diverse in their teaching and what have you. And, you had gotten experiences, whereas they don't do this nowadays, where every other week or 2-3 times a month, you experienced life. Your education was about life, pretty much. So you take field trips. Sometimes you'd have 2 field trips in a week.
Dang.
Where you'd go to places, and we'd go to New York City and stuff like that, and we'd go to Boston.
To actually see what's going on in the world.
See what's going on instead of just talking about it or hearing about it and what have you. So that's how that was in school, in the school system up there versus and of that time versus schools of today. They put everything on a computer, and now you got to figure it out for yourself.
Yep.
And if you know about it, it's because you dug deep into it through the computer, but did you actually touch it, feel it, and see, and hold it and experience it? So
that's interesting, man. That's a totally different, like you were basically doing college type learning in a high school format.
Well, what it was, what I found out years ago. I was listening to, this is when I was a teenager, I was listening to a sermon that Minister Louis Farrakhan was giving. And he was talking about how the schools are changing, and they're not, the middle schools and the high schools and stuff were changing, and how when they went to school in his era, you only went up to what they call the 11th grade back then. But when you graduated from the 11th grade back then, you had the same education as somebody who may have had a 3 or 4 year college education.
Yeah, that's the point,
and what have you, because they taught you about geography, and they taught you about economics, and they taught you you had to take language, 4 years, like I took language for 3 years, and, you took math 4 years, and you took, 3 years of science, you had to take, these things, whereas that's not a requirement now and what have you. So
that's what people talk about. They always talk about, and this is a parenthood thing, but they talk about proper education and dumbing down. Mm-hmm. Like it seems like there's more, but it's so watered down.
Well, see what it was. Here's what I believe what they did in education. They pretty much tried to go into the same groove as the Asian man did with his education, especially, China and Japan and India, where they taught repetition. Yes, if you can. And so they'll train you for one thing, and you kept doing that one thing, and you keep doing that one thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And you got it down pat.
That one thing, you're a master of it. But what happened, they weren't expecting the indigo children, as you guys are part of and what have you, to show up and say, oh, no, I got a mind of my own. I can think. Yeah.
And see, what it was your parent, us as parents of my generation, there were a lot of us who did teach children to think, and we allowed them to think. Never tried to dictate to them, you go this way, you go that way. No, they got a mind. They got to think for themselves, because sooner or later, when they get older, they got to say, why didn't Dad let me do this? You'll never be able to say that, because Dad lets you do it.
Yeah, you're right. I appreciate it.
Have your imagination. It's yours,
Yeah.
Because, 10, 20 years later, if I controlled or directed your path, you'd still be looking for me to direct your path, because
I never learned how to
never learned how to do it for yourself.
Yep.
You knew which way you wanted to go. I can make suggestions, I can guide you, but I can't tell you how you're gonna drink the water. You might want to use a straw. I don't know. So
that is true. And I guess just to pivot in the conversation, and I know it being Father's Day, I have to ask this because Kevin finally he hit this milestone, and my brother she hit this milestone as well, and our co-host Mike hit this milestone also. But what was it like becoming a dad for the first time? Because I know Kevin's a first-time dad, Mike's a first-time dad, and my brother Rashid all first-time fathers. And this is Father's Day for us. So how was it? How was that?
Oh, like I said, it was heavy. It was an experience that it's something you don't forget.
Yeah.
And I remember being there when Kevin was being born, and that long head of his popped out. I had to put that in there. But at first you have to wake up and this is serious business. And I always remembered, like I was getting ready to tell you, I had this relationship with my father, and we talked about everything. And we used to have conversations. It didn't make a difference what it was. I'd ask him anything.
Yeah.
And he'd tell me, And like I said, I didn't know whether he had this relationship with my brothers. I don't think so. Because I guess maybe because I was the youngest, but I'd ask, what it was to be a father, and what does that mean, being father? And he told me, he said, when you're going to be a father, he said, you got to want to be a father. He said, you just don't be a father. He said, some people go out there and put babies out there.
Yeah.
But he said, you got to want to be a father. See, each one of you didn't just show up. You guys weren't a surprise.
Yeah.
We knew you were coming.
Yeah.
No, we actually planned.
Yeah.
Each one of you coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew when you came out. I knew when you came out, and I knew when Rashid came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We planned that because the method of birth control that we used, was what they called back in the day the rhythm method. You know, based it on the calendar and stuff. You knew exactly when. And I asked my father the question, and he told me, he said, you gotta want to be a father to be a father. He said, just not having babies. He said, you gotta want to be it because there's a lot that comes with it. So the thing of it is to want to be in that position to guide someone else through life and what have you. Whether they take your guidance, that's going to be up to them, but you put that guidance out there and you let them live, because they're going to be responsible for their lives. That's it.
That's a heavy point that you raised with that. That's one of the things I always think about, because I don't have a child yet, but I know I'm looking forward to having a child. It's just, like you said, having that ability to guide somebody without forcing.
Right.
That's the balance that you're looking to, and that's a hard thing.
That's like art to itself.
Yeah, your thing is to guide them, help them through what they need. You educate them about life, and you let them see life through you guiding them. But you let them make choices. If they decide, like you guys always come in and say, Dad, question.
Yeah.
This is what I always get from all.
Wow.
And Dad, question.
Yeah. That's true.
But see, I couldn't say, no, I can't answer it, or no, I'm not going to answer it, because I knew who I was, because I used to always, I didn't say, Dad, question. I always just say, Dad, I want to ask you something, or something like that. We'd be talking, or we might be watching a game or something, and something just popped in my head, and I just say, what is this, that, and the other? What's A, B, C, D, F, And he'd start talking. And that was his, wisdom coming out, and he'd, let me know. So that's what that was, and that's how, I wanted to be a father. I didn't just become a father. I wanted to be. And hopefully I did the right thing in wanting to be and doing the right thing of raising men, because like I told you, when you guys were little, I wasn't raising boys. I tell you, I'm raising men. I ain't raising no boys here. I'm not raising boys. So that's what they must get from the Father. The Father's hand and spirit must, seep into them from a distance, whatever that distance may be. And if your guidance was right in doing so, in your rearing of them, it would have been cultivated in them to do what it is they need to do as parents. And so far, from my 2 grandchildren lives that I see, even though Rashid's not there on the regular and Kevin is close by with my granddaughter, I know Rashid knows how to be a father. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah, he does.
He knows how to.
He's right on it.
Yeah, he is.
That's wild, man. That's wild.
Yeah, he has it. He has it down to a science.
Yeah.
It's like it was put in there. It was like it was instilled.
Yeah.
Early.
So, in doing so, that has a lot, I feel, to do with maybe how I reared him. But that's in you, and that's part of the inheritance. If you're gonna father, you father.
I feel you on that one, and that's something I know we have, especially with our generation, dealing with a lot of the new, put like this, the modern social effects and changes. You do have a lot of folk who don't get and don't have fatherhood or fathers around them or people to give that type of energy and influence, it must be respected when you do have that energy around you, because it's necessary. You got to have balance. You must have balance. And so I've seen the outcome both ways, how it works with and without. And this has always been better with, in my opinion. But another thing, and this is a cool thing, man. What's your favorite thing about being a father?
My favorite thing about being a father.
You gotta pick
One thing. I know there's many things, but
Well, you know, I'm going to tell you just like this. It's gratifying to know that we've gotten to this point in our relationship as father and sons that we were able to sit down and do what we're doing here today. Hey,
that's true. I'll say that.
You know, that's something. I don't know how many fathers actually get to do this, sitting in their home and what have you, but, you know, this is an experience for me, as it is for you guys. You know, you've gotten to this place in life where you're able to do this, and thankfully, through the grace of the Creator and the guidance I give you, you had the thought and the ability to be able to do such. So
that's true.
Yeah.
You know,
I will say that. I will let y'all know too. Our father is very influential in some of our quote unquote talents and gives things that we're interested in. Because as we're sitting here right now talking, we got some nice smooth jazz music playing in the background. I know I love jazz music. We grew up listening to this stuff all the time, and I'm telling you, the effects of it on us have been nothing but positive. And again, that comes to that influence and that effect of being a good father, man. And I'm telling you, man, that is much appreciated. Kudos to you. Like I said, we got to give your flowers while you're here. You got to get your flowers while you're here. Oh, another thing. Could you tell some folk, tell the listeners a little bit about your artistic leanings?
my artistic leanings.
Yes, because they're going to hear this side of policy.
As far as
with photography and poetry, etc., and your love for music. Because I like people to hear this so they can understand why we act the way we act. Because they think we're strange.
Oh, no. Well, what it is? I've written. I don't know how many. I've written poetry since I was in high school. A lot of people don't know it. A lot of family members don't know it. And a lot of stuff I do have, you guys don't know about. But when I pass one day, you guys are going to find this stuff out, because there are. I'm serious. I have some boxes and some notes and what have you, things I've written just off of my heart from back in the day, since I was a young man. And art art and music and culture has always been something for me, because it lets the imagination, create and explore for itself, because you're a thinker. You were meant to be a thinker. You were put here as a thinking being. And in doing so, I couldn't ever just look at one form of art, just like, when I'm cooking and what have you. That's a form of art. That's, those are my creations. And so, in being creative and having a creative niche, I guess you say, when I did in my writings and the choice of music I listened to and the music that I would love to have seen back in the day that I went and experienced. Yeah. And I've experienced quite a bit. I've seen everybody from I seen Michael Jackson. I never seen James Brown live. I seen Michael Jackson and Led Zeppelins and Alice Coopers and
David people know, because they don't understand why we act the way we act.
And I've seen some heavy jazz artists. I seen Herbie Hancock and Kenny G and Najee and Grover Washington Jr. And I seen the Funkadelics, Earth and Fire, all of them, Ohio Players, OJs, and Philadelphia International, as funky as can be. You want to talk about some people. Motown was something.
Yeah.
But Philadelphia International, Philly is serious.
They're bad. They had their number.
Because they allowed and really allowed as far as music goes, and all of their productions, that influence of what was called R&B, because jazz was originally called R&B. It wasn't called jazz.
No,
it was R&B.
Yeah, it's just rhythm and blues.
Yeah, and that's what they put through on everything they did.
Man,
you know,
so smooth.
if you ever just go grab you some Philly music, all that stuff. Everybody from the Stylistics to, you know, Harold Melvin, the Blue Notes, and Lou Rawls, and people like that. You know, that's why, you know, groups like Blue Magic, and, you know, the Manhattans, people like that. That was all that Philly stuff. Yeah. So that's... I have a love and passion for music and old movies and things like that.
Was it film noir? Black and white?
Yeah, I'm an old black and white movie person and what
Yeah, I be watching them.
Just because the artistic form of, you know, the actors and what have you back then who were really working each other in their art. Because acting is a talent, you know, that, you know, you have to persuade somebody's imagination to really see what you're seeing and feel what you're feeling, and you are going to project that so they can.
It's hard.
Yeah, but if you're good at it and if you're really dedicated to it, you can make somebody believe you're a killer.
He ain't lying. You know? He ain't lying. No, seriously. You have people hating you in real life.
Oh, sure. Yes, indeed. That tells you how good some of them are. And they will tell the story, and the story will be told. And, you know, you will appreciate the story just by the quality of this person taking the time and effort to actually display something to you that makes you believe it.
That's crazy. That's the right way to think about that.
So, you know, that's how that works. So, so that's why, you know, art and, you know, just like paintings and things of that nature, you know, you see what I have on my wall.
Yeah, man.
But
we can take a picture of that and put it on the episode for the
you
photo.
know, I don't have half of our artwork on the wall.
That's not even out yet.
Oh,
I know that.
I have some put away.
That's the coolest piece right there. Speaking of,
well, this.
Yeah, man. You know, I remember that from way back.
Yeah, that's your
day.
grandmother's.
Yeah.
That was we had that now since I was about 7, 8 years old.
It's been around since you were 7 or 8 years old.
So it's older than me. Wow. So, yeah. So I don't know who did it, but there's a name on it.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually leather on wood.
Wow.
And so you know, there's certain pieces I collect. There's just, you know, I have a lot of cultural stuff, some black artists and what have you. I got some I can't even remember who they are, but some of them I've met. Some of them I hadn't. This is the over the past 20 years I may have gotten.
And then that cool picture over there with the...
Oh, yeah, that was a Father's Day gift of about 15 years ago.
Man, it's so classic, man. Such a good picture.
Yeah.
For the father child.
Mm-hmm.
And put that picture of that black father. Say it again. Exactly. That's when I have to go
It's
there.
just showing fatherhood, period. But
that's the epitome of it.
yeah, you know, for us, you know, it has to be, you know, a strengthening thing. It gives us some power to know that we can develop and bring and cultivate, you know, strong people into society. And that's the thing, you know, about being a father, you know. You don't, if you're a true father and a mindful person, you want to bring to society, you know, something society can, or someone to society that will, reflect what it is you truly are. Because, what you guys do reflect who I am.
That's true. That's true.
And down the line. So what you do will reflect, on your children and who they are and what have you. So that's why I hope I always did, right thing by you guys and stuff,
Most definitely. I remember, what was it? I remember you telling us one time, you said that if you ever have any issues or if anything's going wrong, he said, just always come back to the source. Mm-hmm. Come talk to me, and you can figure out how to get it back where you're supposed to be at.
That's where it comes from.
That's just some advice for everybody who's out here who's a new father. Just remember that, because I'm telling you, it was pivotal for us. It was necessary. I know I took advantage of it many times. I had to go back to the source and ask for assistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Yeah, especially, I know just for me. I know, especially when I first went off to school.
Yeah. Oh, good
man,
Lord.
just the social adjustments and the life changes. But I think, especially those first 2 years, I used to always have to come back to the source. The first 2 years.
It was rough.
Yeah.
Because you're the first two. Yeah, no, you like a guinea pig for everything.
Yes,
essentially. So I've always was kind of the one to venture out. And that's what makes the fatherhood thing very interesting now, too, for me. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not the first one.
No, you weren't. Yeah. This is interesting.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So it's like, so in a way, I kind of have my younger brother now to kind of look at for like advice and guidance on some things. Yeah, so it's kind of neat. Like I said, change your perspective.
It's good not always having to be the lead. I know that.
Sometimes
it's stressing. I like putting stress on Kevin, just so y'all know. I like putting stress on Skip. Because I know he can handle it. He ain't got a problem. He ain't gonna break.
And that's the dope thing about, like I said, with us doing the podcast too, is just the fact that this is something where we have a team of people that we do this, and everybody has equal talents to where we can kind of switch off and we can work with each other. And that's a dope thing. It's not like you have one one person that produces everything, one person that does all the interviews, one person that contacts people to interview, one person to promote. So it's like we all kind of equally share and we all have those gifts. And so that's what makes it fun to do it. And it gives us the ability and the versatility to have these types of episodes.
Exactly. And I'll tell you too, man, one thing growing up and having brothers and the way that our father raised us, one thing I'm big on sharing the pain. Mm-hmm. So if we got to do anything, like he'll tell you, hey, everybody put in their piece. We're going to make it easier and lighter on everybody. Many hands, light work. Yeah. Come on. But I do have, we have two more questions before we finish up today. And these are interesting questions. I guess this is the one, I guess, that you considered this is the hot button question right here. Name one thing you wish you could have changed about raising us.
I wish I could have been in a better situation financially, because there are a couple of things that because I didn't have the full support of anyone else, pretty much, was on me.
Yeah.
So my finances would be stretched to their limits and what have you. And being, I don't know, I'm not going to say, but I could say being a man of color, there are some opportunities there that weren't given to me. And then being a man, a single father, that weren't given to me. They
don't give them.
Yeah, I couldn't get because I was working. Mm-hmm. And as a single father, a single father was working, especially here in the state of South Carolina. You don't get any help.
Not at all.
No, they won't help you. Now, if you're a woman, they'd help a woman.
Oh, yeah, all the way.
Oh, yeah, they'd give her food stamps and all this, they'd get money from the father or whatever, they'd help them, but they didn't give that to a man. Men don't get that. So, and that didn't, faze me. I went and got what I had to get.
I was saying exactly, but it would have been.
Yes. But there was, there were a few times, there were a couple of things that I didn't get to do as far as raising you, as far as acquiring more education for myself, formal education, I guess, and the financial gains that would have came from it, because there are a couple of times when I started a few programs, and, as far as school goes, that I had to let go because it was either work, or as an old saying, your grandmother used to say, either root, pig, or die. So
wow.
So I had to work.
Pick or die.
Root, pig, or because the pig had to root.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
root,
so
pig,
I had to go ahead and root. I had to work.
Yep.
So that was something, at times, it meant me having 2 jobs. I had to have it because, originally when I came south, from what I was accustomed to, earning back home in Connecticut, heck, I had to work 3 jobs. There was one time I had 4.
Wow.
Because that's how unfair, economically they were paying people down here,
Yeah, it was. I know it was.
Yeah.
It made 0 cents.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah,
I'm serious. When I first moved south, what the minimum wage was in South Carolina?
It had to still be at that time. It had to still be around $4.
No,
It wasn't that. What was
it was $2.75.
$2.75?
1988. It was $2.75.
Gosh, good gracious.
And what have you? And when these people told me, when I applied for a job and I asked them how much, I was going to earn, what job was paying and what have you, and they told me $3.75 an hour. Now remember, I was making $5.50 when I was in high school.
Good God.
Okay, I was making $5. When I tell you I was working at the Coliseum and.
This is before $7 minimum wage.
Right. I was making $5.50. I was in high school an hour and what have you. And that was in the 70s. And I was, like I said, I was still in high school. So that trade-off, that was one thing. You just don't know how many times I turned around and took you guys back to Connecticut.
Yeah.
But in the whole scheme of it, the culture was changing so drastically after I moved away from Connecticut after about 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I went back on a couple of occasions. It was turning ugly up there, really. Wow. I seen it, because of the taxes shot up so high. Unemployment was crazy up there, and the culture was changing so much,
The culture in the sense of like the culture of the people?
The people, socially and what have you, they weren't caring, anymore.
They became callous.
The drug influence in that, in the Northeast at that time, that was after all of the, drug peddling from the government, the Iran-Contra, stuff Reagan actually put into effect, him and Ollie North and his boys, and what have you.
Stuff people thought was
try to say they weren't selling drugs.
Yeah.
But it affected the Northeast corridor big time. That was before it even hit L.A. It had it.
So this is like early
They dabbled
80s,
that
right?
stuff into New York City and Boston first.
Gotcha.
Then it went out to L.A. It didn't go out to L.A. until after the 80s. It was in the 90s when that stuff really hit L.A.
Gotcha.
It was hitting in the 80s in the Northeast. New York, Harlem. Shoot.
Go on.
Harlem's a different place now compared to the 80s.
There's an artist that did a series on that too. I think it was called Harlem. It was either Harlem or Brooklyn. I forget. Kevin may remember this, but it was like Harlem before crack, I think it was. And he had all these pictures showing the neighborhood how it was like a real neighborhood. Oh yeah. How the people were like you said, the people weren't counted. They were clean, cut. Everybody was looking good. The people had their own businesses. The neighborhoods were in order and stuff like that. Yeah. And then after.
Harlem and Brooklyn, places like Brooklyn Heights and what have you. That was a area, that was a well-to-do. You got a lot of doctors and what have you. Remember the Cosby Show? That was in Brooklyn Heights. That was supposed to be in Brooklyn Heights.
Yeah.
Those Brown. Yeah. And when Bill Clinton came back and changed some things up in Harlem and what have you with his influence and putting things there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had really, because me and my brother Gary, we would go to Harlem and New York City. I'm 8 years old. He's 12.
Y'all just ride up in there on the bus?
We get on the train. No, we get on the train. You get on the train. Just jump on the train.
Right
Metro North. The Metro North. That's where it started in New Haven. It went from New Haven into New York.
That's crazy, man.
And it only cost probably about. I don't think we paid any more than about $3 or $4 round trip. We get on and ride and what have you. We take our shoes, shine boxes and stuff with us. Sometimes we hustle. And no, you 8, 9 years old, you making $40 or $50.
You right. Yeah, you shouldn't even be having that money. Yeah, you right. Exactly.
I
That's nice.
be having it, but I had it.
You had it.
And then I was getting allowance.
Wow.
So, we'd go down there. All we do pretty much is buy a slice of pizza and watch people watch. And we'd shop and buy things. We'd buy radios and things like that.
Literally going
buy
to hang
some
out in the
shoes
city.
and what have you. Yeah, we just...
That's a lifestyle,
nobody bother you.
man.
They just... Hey, you just part of the woodwork.
Yeah, just walking around.
You just sitting there watching everybody else. They don't know where you from.
And they're busy.
Yeah, that was...
That's
cool,
that
man. Culture, I'm talking about, because my father taught us to do that, to get on the train, because he's the one who took us.
Because like you say, he's a train dude.
Yeah, he was a train. Oh, yeah, he used to love the trains. Your father, he didn't get no airplane.
Yeah.
Or what have you, he didn't care for the bus. He'd get on the train, sure, he'd ride down to D.C. in a heartbeat and what have you, and go shopping and stuff like that. And that's what we used to do. I'm talking about even around Christmas time,
Go down there and go shopping.
Oh, yeah, sure. You go, because you can go to places like back then, you can go to the Garment District and Delancey Street and you can get, especially like jeans and stuff. We used to get jeans, sure. We'd take $20. Yeah, me and Gary would have, 4 or 5 pair of jeans a piece,
$20. Good gracious.
Good God. Sure. Sure. All they wanted the money. Yeah, that's what stuff was coming in and being made at and stuff. Stuff was there, but because the retailers, that's where the retailers got it from, and they'd sell it to the stores. And the stores, they'd sell them for $25 a piece. But they actually only cost them about $2 or $3. So you can get 4 pair for $10.
That is wild. Well, man, this is the last question, quote unquote, in our little question part, of course, that we have to ask. What's one piece of advice that you would give to new dads? What do they need to know about what they're about to embark in that will give them a little setup or preparation for what they're about to see?
Okay. What's the one thing I'm going to tell you like this? I don't give advice. You don't give advice. Don't take advice. Think for yourself. Think about the wisdom that was instilled in you. You know the truth. Everybody knows the truth, This is the thing a lot of people don't realize. They know the truth. You know right from wrong. You're at the place you become a father. You know right from wrong. So you know the truth. Live by the truth. If your child is born a little princess, make sure she stays a princess.
That's true.
If your child is born a prince, make sure he stays a prince. Don't change him based on what society's trying to cultivate your people or you as a person or your children as people to be something else.
True.
Just remember, you can always go back and search history and discover for whence something has come. Because remember, there's always someone trying to change an outcome of what is traditionally considered to be societal to suit themselves to make $1. That's what a lot of it's about.
Hustle.
Somebody's trying to hustle you, yeah. So don't take anyone's advice as gospel. Remember, the gospel was a word that was put originally in parables, so you didn't understand it. But you could look at it, and if you know the truth, and if it looked crooked to you, damn it, it's crooked.
Yeah.
Don't sit up there and say, "Oh no, that's as straight as an arrow," and it got hooks and curves and angles in it. Yeah. No. Tell the truth. You know, that's what it comes down to. Tell them the truth. Always tell the truth to your kids, because you know I never told you guys to believe in fairy tales.
Never. I remember when you heard our heart about wrestling. I'm watching The Rock. I'm up here crying and stuff. He said, "Man, why are you crying?" He said, "Those ain't real."
Yeah,
I was in the 7th, 8th grade. Cause it hurt my heart, man.
Yeah,
It was all fake.
It was all fake. It was a facade.
Yeah, you can't believe in fairy tales. You know, you can't fool your kids into that. You know, never give the. You know, so always tell them the truth and be truthful with them. And when advice is given to you, you know, you can look up the source and what have you. And if it's real and if it's the truth, you have a choice.
Yep.
But you know, you don't have to take it at face value. You can, and always, you know, if I tell you something, I don't want to call it advice, but you look it up and find out for yourself. And if it's true, you know you can go with it if it's the truth.
Yeah. You've always been big about that. You can do what? Search it yourself, research it yourself, get that information.
Find it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you got to walk on this planet on your own 2 feet. What's up, Mama?
Yeah, you know she's been here this whole time.
Yep, hanging out, chilling. We have surveillance. We have a nice little studio audience today, y'all.
Yo, so if you hear just the random giggles and the yells, just realize that's Savannah. So that's my daughter. She chilling, having a good time. So she part of this episode too. This is what the episode is about, essentially. So
exactly,
of course. But one of the things I want to go back to, and I was talking about this earlier online. I posted about this, especially what you said about finding the truth and then just trying to do and finding it for your own sake, and not necessarily just trusting what others say. I think one of the things nowadays we really get into trouble about is we have what they call, I call it broken clock syndrome.
Oh, Kevin's big on it. Yeah,
I'm big on broken clock. And so, you know, a broken clock, of course, you know, it's right. A broken clock's right 2 times out the day.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But what you see a lot of nowadays in society, especially with social media, you see a whole bunch of people following people based off of this broken clock method.
Yes.
So it's like if they got 1 or 2 points that hit with them, that resonate with them, they go with everything else that person says, even though that those points may not be true. It may not be constructive. And that trips me out because you see it all the time, just with different areas of life. Even people who claim not to be experts, people follow them just because they hit on 1 or 2 main points that resonate with them.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you said that and you brought that to light, because part of you thinking for yourself and knowing the truth is you'll realize that not one person has all of the truth. Like there's no way none of us can have all of that.
No.
So you got to go out and you got to search for yourself and you got to learn on your own. In a lot of cases. Now, whatever information you get, of course, you're always welcome to come back and share it with others, you know, that you love and care about. But essentially, nobody has all the truth.
Do not.
And that's where the whole concept, that's where I come with the broken clock thing.
Right. That's why, let me just leave it at, as your grandmother and grandfather used to say, a horse's head is long, but he doesn't know everything.
Man, you all, let's kind of wrap it up for the day. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today to our special Father's Day episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Again, this is DJ and What with my brother Skip and our father Kevin.
Yes.
We got Savannah here holding it up for us as the audience. And we just want to wish you all a special and very safe and prosperous year, but also, man, peace, and shout out to all the fathers out there, new and continuing fathers out here who are doing their thing, making sure they're taking care of their families, strengthening them and propping them up so that they can go out here and be their best out here in this strange world that we have to deal with. So once again, shout out from the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Happy Father's Day. That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.
That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.